Welcome to the RNL, The Revolution Nothing Less show. Today is July 11th, 2024. This is our 204th episode. My name is Sunsara Taylor, and I am joined in studio today by Rafael Caderas.
Hey, good to be here, Sunsara. And yeah, this is a show about an actual revolution to overthrow this whole capitalist imperialist system and replace it with a completely different system based on the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America, written by Bob Avakian, the foremost revolutionary thinker and leader in the world today.
In today's episode, we are going to bring you some footage of the anti-July 4th celebrations, protest actions, art installations that the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity organized across the country. We're going to have a stupidest thing of the week at the end of the show. And the heart of today's show is going to be a substantive and really incredibly inspiring and moving segment of the interviews that we did with Bob Avakian, up close and personal. Hardcore for Revolution, where we asked him about what has sustained him for over 50 years of revolutionary leadership, struggle, work, and advancing the science and the understanding humanity needs to get free. So that's going to be, it's really incredible. We can't wait to share it with you.
But first, Sunsara, we have some leaked footage from a liberal's living room near you. Check it out.
Last week's presidential debate, President Joe Biden was adamant. He believes he is still fit to be the Democratic nominee, and he is not dropping out of the race for president.
If the Lord Almighty came out and said, Joe, get out of the race, and get out of the race, the Lord Almighty's not coming down.
Biden said,
oh no, what am I gonna do? I didn't want to vote for Biden in the first place. I mean, he's carrying out a genocide in Gaza. But Trump, he's an even worse monster, that Cheeto face fascist in my uterus. No, he can't win. But Biden's gonna lose. He won't bow out. I almost feel like I should ask the Lord Almighty to intervene.
You called?
Who are you?
I'm God, here to solve your problems, and if that doesn't work, which it never does, to provide you earthly consolation for all your cares and woes.
Okay, I'll roll with it. Can you get Biden to drop out of the race? He just said on TV he would do it if you asked him.
Why would I want to get Genocide Joe to drop out of the race? I'm the original genocider. Just check your Old Testament. I killed all the firstborn in Egypt. I killed the Ammonites, I killed the Amalekites. Hell, I even killed 14,000 Israelites who were walking through the desert trying to get out of Egypt because they complained about the food. No, I like Biden. I like what he's done with the environment, talking a lot of nonsense while raising the production of oil. I like what he's doing at the border. I can go with Genocide Joe. I'm sorry, I'm not going to get him to drop out.
So you're against Trump?
Oh man, what are you tripping? I love Trump almost more than Biden. I think I do love him more than Biden. You get Trump in there, he's going to take vengeance. And vengeance is totally on brand for the Bible, okay? I take vengeance all over the place, all the time. And plus, Trump is going to shove the Bible down people's throats. And I love it when that happens. This is going to be like, it'll be like a big reality TV show. American Taliban Christian style. With Trump in power. No, I like both these guys. So, let me explain something to you. This is a horrible, rotten system you live under. It does terrible things to people here and even worse things to people all over the world. And people need, whether a Democrat's in power or Republicans in power, people need consolation to get through this system. If we didn't have this system, if we didn't have Biden and Trump and people like that, I'd be out of a job.
What do you mean you're out of a job? You're supposed to be the creator, the master of the whole universe, aren't you?
Yeah, but listen, kid, let me level with you, okay? I mean, I'm supposed to be a lot of things to a lot of people, but I ain't even real. I mean, I'm real if people believe in me. But otherwise, I'm just like a toy store Santa Claus. Like the 7-year-olds think it's real, but anybody 8 years old or over, they don't want to sit in Santa's lap and give me their list. You get what I'm saying?
I knew it. But now what am I supposed to do?
If you or someone you love is in the grip of delusion or self-delusion, whether it be belief in a savior up in the sky or a savior in the Democratic Party, help is just a phone call away. Reach out today to the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity. We will help you deal with reality as it actually is, to reject this system's choices and to join us in saying, no fascist Trump, no genocide Joe. This whole damn system's got to go. We need a real revolution. Reach out today.
Warning. Getting involved with the Revcoms may cause you to care about the world and its people, to question and even give up long-held beliefs, and to challenge your friends and loved ones to raise their heads and act for revolution. Offer is not void, even where prohibited. All right, kids, so instead of calling God Almighty, call the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity, because, you know, the fact that these are the choices being offered in this election and that so many people are agonizing about these choices, that's the time to, you know, get organized for revolution. And this is what the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity did last week, July 4th. We said no to celebrating America and yes to revolution.
Yeah, we want to play a little bit of the footage from last weekend around the country, because it's really important that people reject this whole system and this system's choices and the patriotism, the flag waving, the worship of America, and break allegiance from that and actually come to understand the need for and join the fight for a real revolution. So we want to give you a little sense of what took place around the country, really creative outpourings. But also some of the substance. And we want to play for you Noche Diaz, a section of what he said. He's the national spokesperson for the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity. And part of my speech talking about the leadership we have for this revolution. Let's watch.
We're here to say no. Say no to celebrating America. Say no to the future that these people are taking us in. And say yes to fighting for a real revolution to overthrow this whole system of capitalism, imperialism. No fascist Trump, no genocide Joe. This whole damn system has to go, and all of you beautiful people are in the right place.
Get out of this mess! Revolution, nothing less!
It means a lot at a time when people all over the city, all over the country are getting ready for fireworks or wrapped in red, white, and blue beach towels, bouncing around red, white, and blue volleyballs, licking on red, white, and blue popsicles, all representing the same red, white, and blue that is emblazoned on the bombs, missiles that are being dropped on Palestinian children, incinerating thousands of them. The same red, white, and blue stitched onto the shoulders of every cop who guns down and murders our black or Latino youth. Same red, white, and blue that hangs in courtrooms that find all these cops not guilty for carrying out murder after murder after murder after murder. The same red, white, and blue that has hung off of battleships that have sailed all across the world to destroy and conquer and occupy and ruin people who have then had to flee their own countries to come to the country emblazoned with the red, white, and blue, only to face dehumanization, demonization, and death yet again at the border. This is why we are here to say no to celebrating America, this model of depraved, racist genocide. And yes, to a revolution for a radically new way to live in a fundamentally different system. You've heard today already about the intensity and the sharpness of the time we live in. And over the last few days, it's been even more extreme in terms of how many people are seeing the foul, decrepit nature of the choices that we are being confronted with. But if there is not a force of people who are grounded in a sense of how we could be living and are determined to put something on the line, those millions of people who are roiling right now are going to go back to either thinking about themselves or siding with one or another of these ruling class politicians. They're going to go back to accepting that this is just what they have to live with. And they're going to be served up on a silver platter to the horrors that are coming. But if, instead of that, people are seeing growing numbers of people coming together for the emancipation of humanity, this is the kind of situation and time when thousands and then millions can go through huge changes in a very short time. And that's what we're called on to do. That's what humanity is crying out for. We don't have time. We don't have time to waste, and we don't have time for a change that's going to come in some far-off, distant future. The people who run it now are destroying our planet and wreaking havoc on the future and destiny of humanity. As Bob Avakian has said, we can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to continue to run the world and determine the destinies of humanity. But where do those people go who want to see something better? Well, I'm here to say I want you to join the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity. Where do you go to get organized for that? You come here to the Revcom Corps. Where do you go to get discipline, to learn how to fight for principles and morality that is about emancipating people, and not principles and morality that is in line with the same system we're fighting to get rid of? You go here. You learn the 6 points of attention for the revolution that we live by and fight for. Where do you get into the big questions about whether a revolution is really what's necessary, an all-out fight to bring this system down, and whether it's really possible? You go here to the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity, where we get deeper into understanding all that while we go to work to spread this revolution and bring more people into this revolution. Where do you go to find the courage, the boldness, the fearlessness? Not that comes from being blind and foolish to the dangers, but comes from a determination and an understanding of how we could be living that outweighs and dispels the fears of what will happen to us if we take a stand against this system. You come here to the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity. And where are the leaders for a real revolution and a new society going to come from? It's going to come from the people in the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity, who are working together and learning about what this is for and how we have to go about this revolution. Digging deeply into Bob Avakian, his work, and the dispatches he's putting out. This is how we train ourselves to be the leaders that the people need from us. And I just have to say, look, there were some people who couldn't come here today because there's people in their ears telling them the Revcoms are going to get you in trouble. It's dangerous to be working for revolution. Take a look at the faces of the people behind me. The people who have been gunned down, slaughtered, bombed, died of dehydration, desperately traveling across the world. The most dangerous thing is to continue to allow this system to continue to go on. And if we're gonna not just live, but truly live for a future worth passing on for future generations, we are gonna have to bring this system down.
I want to speak about the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian, who is a complete contrast. I want to talk about who he is and the fact that he is the perfect representative of the kind of revolution we need and the emancipating society and future we are fighting to bring into being, and that this revolution will make real. First of all, Bob Avakian is someone who will tell you the truth all the time, and he will break the truth down in a way that everybody can understand. Bob Avakian is somebody who has a huge heart for all of humanity. He says American lives are not more important than other people's lives. And since the 1960s, when he became a revolutionary, working very closely with the leaders of the Black Panther Party, since that time down to today, Bob Avakian has never and will never make peace with this monstrous system of capitalism imperialism. He roots himself in the scientific truth that this system has to be overthrown. And more than that, he's gone to work in those decades to attack and to solve the biggest problems and challenges and obstacles in the way of people in making revolution. He's forged a strategy for how this revolution could be made right here in this country, the most powerful country that has ever been. And he's advanced and transformed humanity's understanding of what the emancipating character of the revolution we need is. The revolution he is fighting for is not for revenge. It is for the emancipation of humanity. The revolution in the new society he is fighting for is one that not only will meet the material needs of everybody on this planet, food, clothing, and shelter, but more than that, will unleash the human spirit, will give flight to the arts and the sciences, to the human imagination, will unlock a whole different radically liberating culture and relations between people, different genders, different nationalities based in equality and respect, and will foster tremendous intellectual debate and ferment over the way forward to dig up all oppression and exploitation here and all over the world. This is a really big deal. And at the same time, Bob Avakian is every day applying the science of revolution, the new communism that he has forged, to charting the path of making revolution in this country, in this time. Again, this is a big deal. People don't know about Bob Avakian. That's why I'm talking about him. And he is a big deal, and this is why we in the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity make a big deal about him. It's also why many people who hate and fear revolution, including a lot of people who posture and pose as radicals and so-called revolutionaries themselves, but who are really just fighting for a place for themselves within this system. It's why so many people like this hate on Bob Avakian, slander him, spread lies about him, attack him, and try to keep you and others like you from digging into the leadership he's providing. So I want to tell you today, if you hate the way that so many people are treated as less than human, if you dream of and yearn for a world where humanity can finally breathe and walk free, and if you are not afraid of the truth, then you have a responsibility to dig into his work and his leadership yourself deeply. If you are not yet, I want you to open up your phone and follow Bob Avakian on social media, @BobAvakianOfficial. He's breaking down how we can make this revolution, why we need this revolution. And I want to invite you to sign up now today for Revolution School, which is going to be a 4-week course to dig into the first 11 of his social media messages, where he breaks down a foundation of why this system cannot be reformed, why we need a revolution, how this revolution can be made, and why we're living right now in a time when it can be made. So that's a taste of some of what happened here in Los Angeles on July 4th, but also around the country. Here in LA, I also want to mention, though, that Andy Z, who's one of the hosts of the show here, walked people through, he gave a presentation that walked people through this really profound and important broadsheet called We Need and We Demand a Whole New Way to Live, a Fundamentally Different System. And it was really important. People opened it up. They dug into it right in the middle of this. It breaks down very concretely what a new society, what a revolution could bring about if we weren't living under this system with the U.S. Constitution, this exploiter's vision of freedom that's enforcing all these crimes around the world and all the crimes within this country, but actually made a revolution and instituted the Constitution you spoke of at the opening of the show. Written by Bob Avakian, the changes in healthcare, the changes in the way that people relate to each other, the changes in education, the changes to the environment. It's really important that people learn about this because they have to be driven into this revolution, pushed by the horrors of this system. And there is no way out under this system, but also pulled by the inspiration of a whole different world that we can make real through this revolution. So maybe we'll play more of that next week.
Yeah, and speaking of inspiration for a whole different way that the world can be, I really want to call on everyone watching this to actually sign up for the Revolution School, where we're going to be digging into the social media dispatches from Bob Avakian, specifically the first 11, where he gets really deeply into why we need a revolution and how that revolution could actually be made, not in some far off distant time, but in this time we're living in now. So sign up for that. It's on our website. We have the sign up form. Call your friends, tell them to sign up for it. We need to get everyone, that we can, digging into these social media messages from Bob Avakian, especially in this moment, which brings me to this weekend, starting this weekend and all through the next week when the Republican National Convention is starting. Yeah, it's going to be next week and, starting July 15th in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Revcom Corps in Chicago is going to be there, and people should DM the Revcom Corps in Chicago to be part of their contingent out there, bringing revolution right into the midst of that fascist shit show where you're going to have, a bunch of, barrage of white supremacy, of xenophobia, of misogyny, of Christian fundamentalism. We need to be out there saying, no, a whole different world is possible, and we have leadership to fight for that. So if you can't make it to Chicago, wherever you are in the country, you need to be part of spreading this revolution. And specifically, go to Revcom, go to our website, print out the provocations that we have. Here's a few of them. We have these provocations leading people to get into the Bob Avakian social media messages. Truth that the powers that be don't want you to know. The fascist Republicans definitely don't want you to know this. The genocidal war criminal Democrats definitely don't want you to know this truth. Get into it. Spread it this weekend. Take out the slogan that's actually one of the titles of number 55, Bob Avakian's dispatch number 55. No fascist Trump, no genocide Joe. The whole damn system's got to go. Let's get it onto the walls. Let's get it on the trains. Play the Bob Avakian social media dispatches. And let's get the word out about this.
All right. I think that's a very good call. I hope people answer that. We'll put the links in the description below for how you sign up for Revolution School and some of the provocations. With that, I think we want to move to what really will be the most important part of today's show. We've spoken some about the importance of Bob Avakian's leadership, about the problems he's solved in making revolution, the problems most people haven't even begun to think about seriously, and the importance of signing up for Revolution School, which it can make all the difference in a time like this. But I also want to emphasize here that Bob Avakian is a real person. And he's somebody who has given his heart, his life, his commitment, his talents for over 50 years to the struggle to make a revolution. Never giving up, never turning his back on the masses of humanity around the world when so many other people did. He's continued to go at and put himself to how this revolution could be made, what the new society would need to look like. He's done it in the face of slander, attack, vitriol, and he's never let him pull him away from really what humanity needs most of all, which is to get free of all of this. And he's made profound breakthroughs for humanity. I think there is so much to learn from the content of his work, but also from how he's lived his life, how he's persevered, and how he's deepened this path to human emancipation through the course of that. So what we want to do is we want to play the very last question that we asked him when we had the privilege and the honor to interview him on this show about a year and a half ago. We asked him, after all these years, and in the face of so many challenges, setbacks, attacks, all of this, what sustains him? What has enabled him to keep his revolutionary determination, his incredible heart for humanity, and to actually deepen his scientific acuity and leadership through all of that? There's a tremendous amount to learn from this and appreciate, and to spread and to defend this leader. So let's watch this.
You know, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been leading the revolution. You've been a leader before that. And I think people would want to know a bit more about, even as it's been contained in what you said, what sustains you? What makes you not only not give up, but continue to strive and develop the science and to struggle with the masses of people, to struggle with all of us who are following you, and just stating a willingness to struggle with all these masses to get into the one way out for them? And then also maybe say something, even as you've just covered a lot of it, to those people who are in this movement and those people who don't even know about it yet but need to be in this movement, of where are they going to get that inspiration, that courage, that conviction, that sustenance to really put it all on the line, as you just said, to really live and if necessary, make whatever sacrifice is required to bring about a world where humanity could really flourish?
Well, I mean, as the first part, the most fundamental thing in terms of anyone being sustained is having a scientific approach to reality, being grounded in that and consistently applying a scientific method and approach to understand the contradictions that you're up against, to understand the deeper driving forces of things, to understand that everything we've been talking about, all the horrors, are rooted in this system, and that there is a way to eliminate all this by uprooting and overthrowing this system and replacing it with something much better. So in most, the most important thing and the most basic thing is having that scientific method and approach, but it's not something you get once. You have to keep on struggling to apply it in a living way to a constantly changing reality, and to deepening your understanding of that scientific method, including learning from your mistakes, the things you did wrong, but also learning from the things you did right and what results that produced, and then building on that. So that's the most fundamental thing. As far as, more personal thing, I think it's the same as everybody else who's part of this. You come to see that this world is, first of all, intolerable, and second of all, that it's unnecessary. And once you see those two things, then you can't, not apply yourself to actually bringing about the change that's needed, the fundamental revolutionary change that's needed. It's just, again, the science keeps you grounded, keeps you going through all the difficulties and contradictions. But there's a basic stand that what the people in the world are being put through is completely intolerable and completely unnecessary. I mean, I could talk about some of my own personal development in this, but as I've said before, I consider myself extremely fortunate. I grew up in a city which, on the one hand, was a intellectual center. I grew up in a middle-class family. I lived in the Berkeley Hills, where all the better-off people live, and because of that, I was able to be exposed to a lot of, knowledge, but not just knowledge. A lot of intellectual curiosity was encouraged, and I was able to, have a lot of resources to read books, and I used to go to, Shakespeare plays, and I went to plays by Leroy Jones too, and he was called Leroy Jones. But I had, was very, encouraged and was interested in a broad array of cultural and intellectual things. And I had the situation where I could do that because of how I grew up. But then, my life changed dramatically. I mean, for one thing, I'll give my parents credit. Partly because my mom was religious, very religious. My dad was religious. My mom was very religious. They sent me to YMCA camp from the time I was 9 years old. And the one thing really good about that, or the one thing that really stands out, is that the YMCA in Berkeley, which is the one sponsoring the camp, was integrated. You go to the Y was integrated. You go to the camp that I went to for 5 years, it was integrated. And not just were there, for example, black people at the camp, but the cabins that you slept in, the group you were part of was integrated. So, I still remember, I won't say his full name. I remember one dude, Wesley, was in the cabin with me and his cousin, for the years I went there. And, to be honest, when I was a kid, I was kind of spoiled too, coming up, and they didn't like me that much, but I had some interactions with them that made an impression on me, like one time I got really homesick at camp, and I knew that some of these kids didn't like me very much, and so I kind of, when I think I was 9 or 10, I went and I threw myself down in my bunk in the cabin, and either Wesley or his cousin came in and started comforting me and saying, you're not that bad, you shouldn't feel that bad. People don't hate you that much, and it made me feel better, and it made a deep impression on me, and so did the whole thing of going to camp. But, and then I went to middle school or junior high school, as it was called, and, there were very few black people there, but in 9th grade, my best friend, John, was black, and we got pretty close. We did some singing stuff together and had a lot of fun together, and that had an impression on me. And then I consider, like, one of the great things about Berkeley was that it only has one public high school. And so when you go to that public high school, you're thrown together with everybody. Like, there was 3 junior highs when I went there. They're not there now in the same way. But it was Garfield, where I went to, which was overwhelmingly white, some Latinos, and about 25 black people. Then there was Willard and Burbank, where most of the Latinos and, large numbers of black people went, especially Burbank, which was in southwest Berkeley. And we all came together. At that time, the high school was like three years, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. We all came together. And I still remember my first day of high school, they had an orientation. And, if you came from Garfield, there was all this racist shit. And like, oh, man, you're going to go down to Berkeley High, and there are going to be all these black kids there from Burbank and Willard, and you're going to get your ass kicked and all this kind of stuff. And so, they had an assembly the first day for all the new students. And so I got there late. And I was looking for a seat, and I couldn't find, I mentioned this in my memoir, but, I was looking for a seat, and I couldn't find a seat. And I'm walking all around looking for a seat, and then I went by this one guy who was kind of slouched against the wall like this, and his feet were sticking out. And I said, I don't want to get into any shit here, so I walked very gingerly around him. And as I did, he turned to me and said, hey, man, you stepped on my dogs. I didn't step on his feet at all, just to be clear. I said, no, I didn't. He said, yes, you did, man. You stepped on my dogs. And then that was all there was to it. Now, this dude, whose name was Odell, he and I became friends later on. We were in a singing group together when I was a senior in high school. I used to see him out in the hallway, because he didn't go to class all that much. But, he was creative. So I'd see him out in the hallway when I'm going to class, and I'd say, hey, Odell, what are you doing, man? How come you're not in class? He'd say, I'm writing songs. So, then he'd be writing songs for our group, I remember he had one that was called Chuck is Good for You. It was all about, eating good food was good for you. But so, that was Odell, and you go through changes. At first, it's like, you stepped on my dogs. And then we're in a singing group together, and they're telling me, hey, man, step back here a little bit. We don't want your white ass sticking out too much when we're doing our routines. So this is all part of the the really great experience you have. I had many experiences like this. I made a lot of friends. I didn't make friends to make a point. I made friends because I liked people. Some of them were white, some of them were Japanese, some of them were Latino, a number of them were black. But they were people I liked. I got to know them in sports. I got to know them in singing class and this kind of thing. They became my friends. You know what? Friends are people in your heart, okay? Mm-hmm. I don't mean something superficial. I got a bunch of black friends. I mean, these are people that are in your heart, okay? These people that, you go to their house and they come to your house and you talk all kinds of shit with each other about what's going on, and you talk on the phone back in those days. And I don't know what the fuck we talked about, but we talk about it for hours. So these are people in your heart. And then you see what people are being put through. Just, you know, the daily shit and the bigger shit. And, you know, my mom always taught me, you know, as a good Christian, that you should care about other people. That's the kind of Christianity she was about. You should care about other people. So, I cared about my friends, not just because my mom told me to, although that had an influence on me, but I cared about my friends because they were here. These are my friends, and you're doing all this shit. Plus, I loved the culture they were part of. I loved being in a singing group. I mean, I could get into old stories about that. You know, it was a lot of fun. You know, I can remember, I guess I am going to tell a story. I remember one time we went to Live Oak Park, which is the main park one of the main parks in Berkeley, and I could tell more stories about that, but we don't have time for that. And our group was going to do sing for a dance there. And we're walking, you know, past the basketball courts, getting ready to go into the auditorium to do the singing. And and our lead singer was my friend Sam. And a friend of his was playing basketball, and he's coming over to get a drink of water. And he says, "Sam, what the fuck are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I'm here to sing with my group." "You can't sing, Sam." "Yeah, I can, man." So then they had to do a Spaniel song. They had to have a sing-off. Guy challenged Sam to sing. So they did a verse and a half, and the other guy gave up because Sam could really sing. So, you know, this was all, you know, I love this. This was all part of, like, you know, something that, you know, just, made my life rich. And then you're going to tell me that you're going to do this and that to my friends. And then you're going to do this and that to all these other people that are just like my friends. I mean, Sam took me out to his house. We went out to East Oakland. He lived right at the edge of East Oakland, right by 98th Avenue, I think it is. And in those days, San Leandro was right next to East Oakland, and you didn't go in San Leandro if you were black back in those days. And there was a creek and a fence right by where Sam lived, and that was the dividing line. You know, you didn't go into San Leandro. Here, my friend Sam, he couldn't go into San Leandro. It was right across the creek because he'd get jumped on. So I'm saying, what kind of fucking world is this? So that was a big thing to me, you know. And then, you know, the civil rights movement was jumping off, and then, you know, more militant and revolutionary forces like the Black Panther Party came forward, and I was in college at that time. You know, I had recovered from a serious illness, and I had an ambition. I wanted to learn a whole bunch of languages. I wanted to be a Renaissance man, you know, be able to speak at least 5 or 6 languages and read literature in all these different languages, you know, and I was taking all kinds of literature courses, and I had a favorite professor who was Italian, you know, and all this kind of stuff. I was enjoying my time, but I also was still thinking about all these big things going on. And then the Black Panther Party came along. You know, and I was devastated by the death of Malcolm X, like a lot of people were, millions and millions of people, and more than that around the world. And the Black Panther Party came along, and, you know, well, I could go back, you know, just since you asked me this question, I'm going to get into it. You know, so I mentioned my friend Billy, you know, so about when I was still in college, but just, you know, maybe about 1965 or something, I was down at this rec center in Southwest Berkeley. It used to be called the Grove Rec Center, but it's not called Grove anymore. But I was down there, and my friend Billy was playing basketball. He was a great basketball player. And then, you know, after they finished up, he introduced me to this dude named Weasel, whose nickname was Weasel. And they'd played against each other in high school. You know, Weasel went to McClymonds High School in West Oakland, and Billy went to Berkeley High, and they played a great game. But unfortunately, McClymonds won, and our high school that Billy played for lost by 1 point in overtime. And it was a bitter thing, but they were friends, Billy and Weasel. So Billy and I talked a while, and then he introduced me to Weasel, and Weasel and I started talking. And, you know, Weasel was interested, as I was, in all this shit going on. So, you know, we kept on talking, and then he asked me to give him a ride home. So I gave him a ride home. We went over to his house, and we stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning drinking coffee and talking with his mom, as well as him, of course. You know, the three of us talking about what was going on with black people in America and all the shit this imperialist ruling class was doing in Vietnam and the Congo and all this kind of stuff. I still remember that very vividly, this staying up till 2 in the morning. And then I hung out with Weasel for a while. And then one day he said to me, you know, there's going to be this cultural program going on at the community college in Oakland. I think it's called Merit now. And so he said, why don't you come on down there? It's an Afro-American cultural program. So I went down there, and, I was, I think, one of 2 white people in the audience, but that was fine. And Bobby Seale turned out to be the MC. And he was hilarious. I mean, he could do great impressions of all kinds of people. He did an impression of Bill Cosby back in the day. He was down on Bill Cosby for doing I Spy, being a CIA agent, and he was mocking Bill Cosby, imitated John Kennedy, all this kind of shit. And I thought he was great, as an MC of this program. And so then the program ended, and I'm starting to leave, and this guy comes up to me, and he says, "Who are you, Socrates?" And I said, no. And then it turned out it was Huey Newton. And then we started having a discussion about what's going on with black people, black liberation, revolution. And he said to me, are you part of the CP? Because he was trying to figure out why I was there. First, he wanted to know if I was Socrates. Then he wanted to know if I was in the CP. Are you in the Communist Party? And I said, no. That's good. They're not revolutionary. Are you in Progressive Labor Party? I said, no. He said, that's good. They pretend to be revolutionary, but they're not revolutionary either. And then we got into a discussion, and he was running down about how revolution could succeed, especially for black people in America, because although they might be a minority in America, at least 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the world was with them. So it's possible they could make revolution here. And that was, somewhat naive. It wasn't a fully developed scientific approach, but it made an impression on me, and this whole discussion made an impression on me. And then I was working at Ramparts magazine, and Eldridge Cleaver got out of prison on the basis of getting a job at Ramparts. So we were talking all the time, and I used to go over to his house, and as I mentioned, I talked to him on the phone sometime. And, and this just got me, much deeper into understanding that we needed a revolution. And I just bring it to a close by saying none of the things that I've mentioned that propelled me in this direction have gotten better. It's not that, there's more black middle class, there's more women able to do this and that, but these terrible forms of oppression, not just to people, the whole Vietnam War thing, all the atrocities that you learned about, I took that war very seriously. I took time to make up my mind. When I was in the free speech movement, we had a sit-in the administration building for a couple of days and finally won our demands. But all the leaders of it, or almost all of them, were against the Vietnam War. And I remember Mario Savio, the main leader, got up and talked about what the administration was doing against us was the same type of thing that our government was doing in Vietnam. And I kind of didn't like that because I wasn't sure, how I felt about Vietnam. But I was studying. I was going into the library, and I was reading up on all the different, things that were being analyses about Vietnam, and I was reading about the commission that was set up to oversee the situation in Vietnam, International Commission, and they were reporting that it was the U.S. side that was violating all the agreements. These kind of things are going around in my mind, and I'm thinking and studying and everything. And then, as I've said a number of times, I woke up in the spring of 1965. Got the newspaper, and here's this great big article about Selma, Alabama, and the Pettus Bridge and the attack on the civil rights marchers, and that was it for me. I said, how in the fuck can these people, this government that claims it's bringing freedom to the people of Vietnam and getting rid of these terrible communist tyrants, how in the fuck can they be bringing freedom to the people in Vietnam? Why would they even be trying to do that when look what they're doing in this country and look what the government is allowing to go on right here? And that was it for me. So, all these things came together, but none of this has gotten better. If anything, it's gotten worse. The environment, the whole thing of the environment was just starting, the environmental danger and crisis was just beginning to be recognized at that time. Some people saw where things were headed. But it's gotten obviously worse over decades, and it's accelerating all the time. And, the danger of nuclear war, all these things have not gotten better. And, the people that I care about, that I've learned about, not just the people I grew up with, but the people around the world that I've learned to care about when I've learned about their situation, to me, for me to give up would be betraying all those people. It'd be like turning your back on your best friends. So it's fundamentally the science that's the foundation, and that you need to keep deepening and applying and grasping and learning, or else you will go off course. But there's also a thing, but I think everybody who gets into this revolution feels that right here you feel like what people are being put through, you just can't go along with it. You just can't stand by and watch it happen. You can't live with yourself if you don't do everything you can, especially when you know it's unnecessary and a better world actually is possible. You can't give up. Yes, you can get discouraged. When there's defeats, when there's setbacks, big ones, gigantic ones, like when China went off the socialist road, was taken off the socialist road, and the revolution was betrayed there, and capitalism was restored, and it's emerged as an imperialist power instead of a revolutionary stronghold for the people of the world. Those things are discouraging, but you bear down with the science, and you keep in your heart why you got into this in the first place, and what it is you're in this for. And that's why I don't give up. So that's what I would say about that.
You just heard something incredible. If you haven't watched these interviews, now's the time to watch them. If you've watched them before, now's the time to go back and rewatch them, because there is nothing else like what Bob Avakian does in these interviews. The commitment that he demonstrates, but also the science that he brings to bear in answering the biggest questions of the revolution. So watch these interviews and spread them everywhere.
It's that time again. Time for the stupidest thing we heard this week. Or this week in reactionary woke lunacy. Last week, a woke Twitter mob tried to cancel the actor Mark Ruffalo. They said, and the Middle East Eye and other publications amplified this, that he was Islamophobic. Oh shit. Did Mark Ruffalo say that all Muslims are terrorists and they should be banned from the country? No. When that happened, he protested. Okay, well, did he excuse the bombing of civilians in Gaza because, after all, Israel was attacked? No. He's repeatedly put his career on the line to call that shit out.
The Palestinian protest shut down the Oscars tonight. Humanity wins.
So what exactly did Mark Ruffalo do to get canceled for Islamophobia? Turns out he called out Project 2025, a terrifying blueprint for a radical fascist remaking of all of society if Trump comes to power. Here's what Ruffalo posted on Twitter. Quote, Project 2025 is not a game. It's white Christian nationalism. It's the Sharia law of the Christian crazy people who aren't Christian at all but want to control every aspect of your life through narrow and exclusionary interpretation of Christ's egalitarian, inclusive, and kindly teachings. Don't be fooled, he goes on to say, by Project 2025's extremist and perverse ideology. Trump is bringing it all to our lives. Abortion, LGBTQIA rights, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of education, and equality between the races and genders. Gone. Forced birth and forced religion. Trump's American Taliban. Fucking right on, Mark. Well put. But to idiot wokesters and apologists for Islamic fascism, comparing American Christian fascism to the Taliban and Sharia law is Islamophobic. Seriously? Have you looked at the Taliban? Girls literally cannot go to school. Women are stoned to death in public if they're even accused of having sex outside marriage. They get burned with acid. Half the population is imprisoned in their homes and under the fucking burqa. And have you seen Sharia law in Iran? Do you remember Mahsa Jina Amini, who was murdered by Iran's morality police? For good reason, millions of women, furious women, and many others risked their lives to rise up against this. This is barbaric. Just like the Christian fascist theocracy that is promised in Project 2025 is barbaric. And calling out Islamic theocracy is not the same as calling out all Muslim people, just like calling out Christian fascism is not the same as calling out all Christians. Look, as bad as the Christian fascism is already in this country, banning abortion, attacking LGBTQ rights, posting the 10 Commandments in courtrooms across Texas, teaching the Bible in every classroom in public schools in Oklahoma, this isn't even close to their whole program. It's just a taste of the nightmare they have in store if they fully consolidate power, which they are determined to do, which is precisely why it is useful to compare this to the Taliban, because that is a full-blown Dark Ages theocracy that has fully taken power. And don't say it can't happen here. Islamic fascism is no better than, but also no worse than Christian fascism in power. This woke bullshit is cowardly and it's harmful. Instead of canceling Mark Ruffalo and intimidating others who might have the conscience and the courage to speak out, people should be cheering the way he has used his influence to call out this danger, and they should be joining with him to stand up against it while there is still time.
So before we close out the show, Sunsara, we just have to say something about what's happening in Gaza. You know, this has been one of the most horrific last few days, and it's getting worse. You know, just in the past few days, the state of Israel, fully backed by the United States, has bombed UN relief agencies, has bombed schools, has killed journalists. 5 more journalists have been killed just in the last few days, you know, making it even more difficult for them to report and expose to the world what's actually happening. 10,000 Palestinian prisoners continue to sit in Israeli prisons and are being tortured. In the West Bank, Israeli settlers continue to gobble up more land and brutalize and carry out violence against innocent Palestinian people. And although the Gaza Health Ministry has reported nearly 40,000 people killed, well documented, you know, nearly half of them children, the Lancet Medical Journal just came out with a study saying it's very plausible 186,000 people may be dead in Gaza because of this U.S.-backed Israeli assault on the Palestinian people. Dead through, you know, direct causes, but also indirectly from disease, from the hunger. And all this is spreading. You know, people are living in tents, herded from one place to another, suffering from diseases. Their bodies can't heal from infection. You know, they're getting skin diseases. It's a nightmare, you know, and this is all being done once again with U.S. bombs, U.S. weapons, U.S. collaboration in this starvation campaign against an entire people. So, you know, go to revcom.us to read much more on this. And this is all of our responsibility to stand up to stop this genocide and to get to the root of the problem, which is the system of capitalism, imperialism, by making a revolution to overthrow the system.
Well, I'm really, really glad you brought that in. People should, like you said, go to revcom.us. There's so much more coverage of this there. And all the more reason to step forward into this revolution now. Join us this weekend in spreading the need for this revolution, the way out. No fascist Trump, no genocide Joe. This whole damn system's got to go. And spreading the leadership and fighting for the leadership that Bob Avakian is providing so we can really make this revolution. so we can get to a whole different kind of world in this time. So I want to thank you for joining me on the set this week, Raphael. It's been a good show.
Yeah, great to be here.
And thanks to the whole crew that put this together and spread the show. Leave a comment below. Let us know what you learned, what you think, what questions you have. If there's things you want us to address going forward, let us know in the comments below. And we'll see you back here next week.
All right.